So, Jai Hind everyone, and a very happy Independence Day to everybody who's watching this video. So, in this video, I am going to talk about my SSB Kolkata experience. Those who all were new to this channel should know that this was my second attempt at SSB Kolkata. I've been there before, and for that, do check out my video. I will pin that video. You can check out in the description. In that, I have covered in detail about the documentation part and everything, how you can travel to Kolkata and everything. In this video, I'm going to particularly talk about the 5 days of experience that I had, because this was my first 5 day experience. So first conference out. So I'm going to talk about that in detail. So let's start the video.
The heads are up, the chests are out, the arms are swinging and cannons count. Sound off. 1, 2. Sound off. 3, 4. Cannons count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is picture perception and discussion test. What all happened, and so the first thing was that the OIR sets that was given to me was like 52 and 55. OIR 52 and OIR 55. So you can get that from any Telegram link or channel that is there. You can just take it from like any Telegram group. There are a lot of Telegram groups that are there. So you can just check out all those Telegram groups, and from there you can just you know get all the OIR sets, because this is very important. Because what people do is why should I say people, in fact me, when I went for my first SSB, I did not practice OIR that much, but it is very important that you at least attempt 20 plus sets before going to any SSB interview process, so that you are thorough with the questions, the kind of questions that are keeping coming up, or they are repetitive. You can just like in my Allahabad experience, I have already discussed it in my previous videos, that what happened is that all the repeaters, with due respect, they had the idea of majority of the questions that were there in that OIR, that I don't remember the OIR particularly, but they they had practiced so much that they were just looking at the question and just answering the answer. So they were like that. So I would recommend, highly recommend, that before going to SSB, the OIR set should be practiced, that you can get from any Telegram group. There are a lot of Telegram groups that are there, so you can get it from there. So now I'm going to talk about the picture perception and discussion test. So basically, this picture was shown to us, where there you can see that there is a man standing, age between 45 to 50, and there are two subordinates to him, and they are age between like 20 to 22. And there as a background, you can see that they are standing in a corridor, and there is wall and there is paintings on that corridor and everything. So this was the picture. Now this time, what different I did, I will later discuss it. First I will briefly discuss the process. So coming back to PP and DTT, so what I wrote, the picture is that Ravi, who is a 22-year-old BTech second year student, he is invited to a quiz competition. So for that, he takes consultancy from his teachers. Then he gets to the library and takes all kinds of books and magazines to be updated about each subjects. Then I wrote about that, how from websites he can take people's PYQ questions, and how they practice among themselves also on various topics. And finally they made it to the quiz competition, and they participated, and they were satisfied with that. That's all I wrote. And then coming back to the GD part, the group was divided in such a way that half of us were screen outs and half of them were repeaters. So, and the GD started, and I will tell you that for my past experience also, nothing new I did this time. If you can ask me clearly, nothing new I did. They just started with a brief introduction about their characters, and then everybody just mugged up their story, and then they started narrating one by one. So the first person started narrating, and then second, third. When my turn came, I was just number 6 at that point of time. So I just briefly explained my picture. My picture was simple. The actions were simple, 3 to 4 actions I wrote. And first I described the picture. One thing that I kept in mind is that while the picture was shown to us, the person was there. She told that the action of the picture should be the first stimulus that you see in the image. So when I mark this point as a like a very, it's a very important point. The action of the picture should be the first stimulus that you see in the image. So I just like catch the first stimulus that I see, that they are taking some kind of guidance from the teacher, and so I wrote it like that, seeking guidance from his professor regarding quiz competition. That's all I wrote. And then because it is important, and then two things comes into picture when you are writing the story. Now, all that I have covered in my previous videos, that how to write a PPDT picture. Further, I'm going to come up with more videos, but in this one, I'm going to stick only to my performance or what I wrote. So, how we know that the picture in the PPDT, we need to write it in three points, major 3 points. What led to the situation, what is happening in the situation, and what is the outcome of the situation. So, what led to the situation is that they was selected for a quiz competition. What is happening is they are preparing 3 to 4 actions related to that, and the outcome is that they evenly participated. Okay, no wishful thoughts that they won a second medal or something like that, nothing. They just participated and they were satisfied with their performance. That's all. And their and maybe I wrote that their professors were happy about it or something like that. That's all I wrote. Kept it simple, very simple. Always remember that the primary character in that box that is given in PPDT, you need to like encircle it. Never forget that. I did that in my Bangalore experience. Okay, so now like we were talking about the GD. So everybody was like having a different kind of story. What I clearly remember is that the kind of stories that the screenouts were narrating, the stories were very simple and to the point. Like majorly about, like I wrote about quiz. Somebody wrote that some people are taking guidance from their senior. They work in some bank and something like some kind of stories. But as soon as the repeaters started narrating their pictures, what I noticed that the pictures were highly imaginative, like highly, like somebody I don't remember the chess number, but he described the scenario as like an exhibition going on, and in that exhibition, the key element that he talked about is the background of the picture. As you can see, that there are paintings on the wall. Now this is a generated image, but in that image, the paintings were not clearly visible. So he told that there is an exhibition of various kind of antenna systems and radar system, and he then talked about all the technical details of that. So that was a very good story because there was a lot of imagination in that story. I find that in my story, like it was a like simple story about a quiz competition, and it was a very simple story. But that gentleman, he wrote in detail about how specification related to technical details that he knew. He was also from electrical background, so he knew a bit more about all these antenna systems and everything. And another gentleman was there. He noticed the key thing, that is sticking to the fact that there is a book in the hand of the man who's in the middle. So he narrated that he's trying to some kind of although his story was something different, that he's trying to point out the mistakes of the candidates in their examination. Since this is a generated image, again you can see it is clearly that is a book, but there the images was a little blurry, so it was not clear that it is a book or it is some kind of sheet or paper. So I think that somebody wrote that it is a answer sheet and how to improve in their examinations and how they performed in the exam or something like that. So again, the GD started and it was a fish market. I will tell you, everybody started shouting, and it has happened to me multiple times. But I narrated my points in detail when my narration was there. In the group discussion, the key thing that I did is, like in my last SSB, if you can check out my video about SSB Bangalore, I clearly mentioned that the common story of the discussion was my story, and everybody was just relating to me and telling that yeah, I agree with chess number 75's point. And since it was my story, so all the actions that were coming up was from my side. I was just narrating the whole story, like, gentlemen, we can also proceed with this, gentlemen, we can also add this point, and everybody is yeah, agreed. And I was thinking that I will get screened in, but I didn't get screened in. So here I would like to tell you one point, that speaking confidently, making points, are like some of the factors that everybody is prepared for. Okay, and the key part is that the SSB is looking for key aspects of an officer in all of us, but they're also checking for some underlying qualities. I think so. That some underlying qualities that are in a few of them and not in everybody. Like you can, if you have been to SSB once or twice, you know that there are people who start with, please let guys, let's just number 35, let him speak. There are people to show that they are empathetic towards others and all of that. So one technique that happened with me in Bangalore, I applied it here. What I did is that you keep quiet for the first 3 to 4 minutes, let others speak first. Then take a pause, and when you see that the group is like they are like coming to a point, like generally they discuss about the number of characters and the gender. So you can just start then and there that, okay gentlemen, and yeah, remember that when you start, make it brief, make it in points, and make it clear, precise. Okay, brief in senses that cover all the points that you can think of at that point of time, whether it is right, whether it is wrong, but at that point of time you need to speak all the points and to the point, crisp. Okay, so I started off with like, gentlemen, I think that the number of characters and everything can be discussed, and we have concluded that there are two people in the image, and one elderly person in the image, and most of us have considered that he's a professor or a guide, some kind of that. Then I switched to that chess number 20's narration, and some chess number 22 or 23, I mentioned them, and I told that in I find that they mentioned two crucial points that all of us missed in the narration part. And then now everybody was quiet because they had no idea what I am talking about. And then I said that first thing that when chess number 20 was speaking about his narrating about his picture, he mentioned that there is a and kind of exhibition that is going on. So he mentioned the background of the picture, that is a very important aspect of this picture, and I think that his picture clearly matches the picture that was shown to us. Also, chess number like assume 22 or 23, he mentioned about a booklet or a book that is there in the hand of the guide or the professor. So it can be that he's made sure that the stimulus is that he's kind of guiding to the students. So I mentioned these two very crucial points, and at that point everybody just agreed to this point. And you can see that this is something that is an underlying quality, na? That you are trying to get points from others narration, so this shows that you are clearly listening to others narration. So I think that, and I made my point, and after that I didn't speak for that in that discussion. Only everybody then again started shouting and they discussed, and eventually I was screened in. So what I'm trying to tell you is, like, when the narration starts, try to listen to every narration first, and when the GD starts, wait for 1 or 2 minutes, and when there is a pause, or then when they are discussing about gender and number of people, you can come up with such points from others narration. Whether it is right or wrong, that is a different aspect. But here, if you are trying to justify that you have listened from others narration, this shows that that you are empathetic toward others without shouting or without describing anything else rather than this. So I think that that's how I got screened in. And obviously the OIR played a major role. I did OIR very good, and it was due to the number of times I practiced the sets from the Telegram groups. So you can just download that, and then you can just get screened in. Okay, so it like clearly it was like a heavenly experience for me when I got screened in, and I didn't imagine that I'll get screened in because I was screened out twice. So this was my third attempt, and I got screened in. So now we'll talk about the later stages, that what happened. So clearly in the psych test, we know that there are 11 pictures, one blank picture. Then there is self description test, there is VAT, there is SRT. So first I'll start with psychology. So there were 11 pictures. Okay, the last picture, that is the 12th picture, I wrote the same story that is there from my PPDT picture. I wrote the same quiz story there because that is on upon our imagination what we can write there. So I just wrote the same picture. Then talking about the pictures that were shown to me during my TAT. So the first picture that I remember is of two boys who are like showing the fingers to each other. Okay. The second picture was about a boy who was drowning in a river, and then there was a boat nearby with people in that boat. So this was the second picture. The third picture was a bullock cart, a village scenario, and then there was a bullock cart with a farmer on it. I assumed him as a farmer, and then he was kind of riding that bullock cart. So this was the third story. The fourth story is that a man is sitting on a chair, and the age of that man is between 25 to 28, I assume that. And there is another man who is walking inside the room, and his age is between 22 to 24, kind of like that. So this was the image. Then there was an image about a boy who is walking on a bridge, simple bridge. He's walking on that bridge, and this was the image. Then there was an image about three boys were standing on a stage. I assumed that they were on a stage kind of platform, and they had one of them had his hands on his face, and the two of them were walking away from kind of walking away from that boy who was standing in the middle. So this was one of the images, and the last image that I remember is was about it is a very prominent image because I have practiced it also. It's in a room. You can see that there is a guy who is moving outside the room, and then there is a guy who is inside the room who is looking behind. So this kind of image was there. So these were some of the images. Now some of the mistakes that I did in PP in TAT basically was that there was low imagination. I think so that there was low imagination. Then there was low actions, obviously, and I particularly mentioned BTech to my primary characters each time. I think that is also maybe that can cause some issue because each time if you are talking about BTech, maybe you are from a technical background and it is understood. But in each scenario, if you bring out a BTech student, then that is something that is questioned. I think so. And then the stimulus, some stimulus was very strong according to me, but uh, I took the act as a negative image, or I was not able to catch the stimulus clearly. So these were some of the points. Later in the video I'm going to talk about all the mistakes, but for now this was my experience. Now coming to the interview. Okay, so the interview was on the third day. Okay, and it is on my first interview, and although I had practiced a little about my PIQs, everything that I mentioned, starting from the sports, hobbies, and interests, and everything, and the certifications that I mentioned, I talked about NCC also. So about that, where I belong, details about 26 Bihar Battalion, details about Bihar, details about Patna, details about my schooling, details about my examinations that I have given, all kind these basic CIQs I had practiced. So what happened is in the interview, what I would like to start my experience is why the past behavior is the best example of future conduct. Okay, so the more consistently a behavior has been demonstrated in the past, the greater the likelihood that it will be repeated in the future. This is a very important point while you are preparing for your interviews, because whenever we are in an interview, they always dig about your past experiences. Why? Because they want to know that what kind of a person you are from your experiences, and will that person will be able to command 100 men out there in a battlefield, and or not, basically, and all those qualities they try to get it through your experiences. So my interview was taken by the vice president of the board, uh, deputy president, and when I entered the room, sir greeted me like, Harshad, good morning, Harshad, please sit down. And then he uh, he tried to made me, because I was anxious. There is a waiting period. We know there is a waiting period, and for before the interview, and there is a waiting room that we were allotted to. So we sat down, and there about 5 or 6 minutes I was called in, and I went straight, and he maybe there was anxiousness on my face, so he made me comfortable. First of all, he made me comfortable. I went inside, I handed over my whole certificates list that I had with me, documents I share. I just handed him over that, and then I sat down comfortably, and he asked me a basic question. Hi Ashit, how was your day? And that okay, what I did is since I was anxious, I started answering. He said, how was your day? So, a very beautiful morning, sir. And then sir, then he asked that how was your breakfast? And I was like, sir, very tasty, sir, very tasty breakfast, sir. And the accommodation is great, and I had a very good sleep. These were some of the things that he was not even asking, but since I was so anxious that I started answering. And this is one of the major mistakes that people do, that while when the interview is just getting started, and we should not answer so much so many points, and we should just answer it in small points so that the interview can start properly in a formal way. I was anxious, and this was my first interview, so I made mistakes. So the first thing is that, like, he asked is that, hello Arshit, okay, so we next 45 minutes we're going to talk about you, about your experiences, about your hobbies, interests, and things like that. So Harshit, tell me, first thing he asked me was, tell me about your strengths that you think you have. So at that point of time I told him that, sir, my strengths are my focus and my determination. So he said, very well, Harshit, can you explain this? So I explained him with some real life examples. I was prepared for that. Then he asked me my first CIQ, starting off with my 10th and 12th till my graduation, about my education. Then he started talking about my friends, then my teachers, then my parents, then my hobbies. Then in my hobbies I wrote about cooking. So he told me to get a list of all the ingredients that I need to uh, make my favorite dish. And then he told me about what was your tell me about your whole journey from from your hometown to this SSB board. And so there were more questions. So the first thing is that I forgot 2 to 3 points, and it was quite natural. I think so that it was natural for me. But the questionable part was that I told him that focus is my strength. So if I'm saying that focus is my strength, that I should have remembered the questions, but I did not. So nevertheless, then the second CIQ came. In that also I forgot 1 or 2 points. It was about majorly about related to my exams that I have given, achievements if any. Then majorly based on PIQ, the approximate population of your state, approximate population of your city where you reside. Then he talked about the capital city Patna. Then he talked about major news, political news of Bihar. Then he talked about international news, national news. These kind of questions that are majorly in CIQ 1, CIQ 2. He asked me related to that. Then he asked about Indian Navy. So since I have taken guidance from AFPA and I have taken SSB coaching, so I had an idea about that, and I had prepared about all the frigates and relate all the shapes, amphibious vessel, and the whole structure, the Vikrant and INS Vikrant and INS Vikramaditya, and every detail related to the Indian Navy structure, and the rankings and everything, the wars fought and the major operations. These kind of small details I remembered. So when he asked about Harshit, tell me what all you know about the Indian Navy. So I started with the Indian Navy. I started with join the Navy, see the world, and Indian Navy is the seventh largest navy, and details covering everything related to the missiles and everything. So while I just started, okay, and I think that he understood that I know all of the current affairs and everything. So he just switched the question, and the next question was, Harshit, have you taken SSB coaching? And then I said, yes, sir. I have taken coaching. Then he's like, okay, Harshit, why do you think that SSB coaching is necessary? So I told that, sir, SSB coaching is necessary because I have given two screen out attempts, and I wanted to check that where do I stand among my competitors, and I wanted to analyze my mistakes. I wanted to improve upon them, and taking an SSB guidance can help me because there are DIPR assessors whose sole purpose is to uh, you know analyze students character and behavior, so they can give me a better report about my performance, and I can improve upon my shortcomings, and then prepare well and then come to the SSB. And he's like, Harshit, tell me about ASPA, who all assessors were there. And I knew, so I just answered him. Then he said that, okay, Harshit, then he came to ATC, air traffic control. So he talked about what is ATC, Harshit, how it works. So I told him in detail about ATC. But then he asked me, Harshit, tell me, like I mentioned about the runway and the cross the radar system that is there that determines various kinds of missiles and aircraft. Then I mentioned, then he asked me that, Harshit, how do people who are there in the ATC, they contact a pilot who is there in an aircraft? So I was not aware of this, so I was not able to answer this question. Then he moved to uh, random questions related to chess, carom. He asked me, I had mentioned about sports, so he asked me questions on chess, on carom. Then he asked about my family in detail. Like, he started off with my father. He then talked about my mother, then my sister. Then he came to my relatives, my father's side relatives. Then he went to my mother's side relatives. He asked about their profession. And then he came to my friends. Now again, he asked me that, Harshit, who all are your friends or closest friends? So I mentioned a few names. So he said that, Harshit, okay, tell me your daily routine. So now I told him that, sir, I wake up at 4, and then I generally I start try to study something, and then after that I go for a quick workout or a run for like 1 hour, and after that, sir, I take a bath, then have my breakfast, And so generally, since this is my holiday period, I was at that point of time I was placed, so I was at my home when I went for my SSB. So I just mentioned that, sir, I just completed my BTech, and it is a holiday time, and so I'm utilizing this time for preparing for my CDS examination. And so, sir, I after my breakfast I prepare for my CDS, and then, sir, in the evening, sir, I go out to play with my friends. So he just interrupted. Harshit, then tell me that how you spend time with your parents. So I told them that, sir, I help my parents with the house chores that are there. I told him that I in the evening I take time out of my schedule to talk to my parents, and generally over dinner we have conversation about our day-to-day experiences and shortcomings. So he said, okay, Harshit. Then he asked me certain questions related to experience at that SSB. He asked me that, Harshit, what all places have you visited in this SSB compound? So I told him that there was Sarvodham Sthal that was there at SSB Kolkata. Then I mentioned about a few points related to the birds that were there, and then random stuff. Then he told me, okay, Harshit, your interview has ended, and then that's all. So this was my second day. Then the third day, GTO started. Now in the GTO, we first started with day one. In day one, the first thing was group obstacle race. So group obstacle race, we completed group obstacle, then we came to PGT, where is progressive group task. So in progressive group task, what happened is that since we were a group of freshers, now how were we freshers? Like 6 7 were there in my group, and 6 of them were freshers, and I was screened out. So generally we were considered freshers. So in that we started with our PGT solution, and since I had taken coaching, so I had an idea that everybody will start, taking Rassi and Balli and then start putting solutions. I simply backed off, and I let others. I made sure that others approve their point first, because I knew that they will stuck. And during my practice at my SSB coaching, I realized this point that in PGT especially, this happens that once the person is trying to move forward and find solutions, he will get stuck somewhere, and that is the point, like जहाँ पर मैं उसे पॉइंट आउट करूंगा और मैं उसे बताऊंगा कि भाई ये भी कर सकते हैं. तो द सेम सिमिलर थिंग हैपेंड. मैं पीछे रहा, and he just went. There were 7 of us, so you know that in PGT it generally happens that 4 people will be there, who will be just standing and just looking to or shouting from the start line that what is happening and all of that. The GT will not consider all those people. Let me make it clear. People who are inside the solution with the or with the Fattaballi, and like trying to get a solution, they are evenly evaluated. Okay, and then I was there. Then what I did is that I started shouting my solutions. Ki, gentlemen, we can do this also, this also. Then the GTO noticed this, and he said that, chest number 6, if you have an idea, please switch places with any of the chest members and implement the solution. So you can see that I did not, you know, myself volunteered, snatching Bali from others and Rassi, and then trying to, not showing cooperation. I did show cooperation. I just like showed my way of thinking and my solution, and just spoke confidently about my solutions. Then the GTO told me that you can just switch places. I switched places, and then I started making the solution. Now there was a lot of discussion among us, and then we cleared our first obstacle, and then the GTO was like completely fed up with our solutions, and then he said that, okay, gentlemen, we will move to the next task. And we said, okay, okay, sir. Then the next after GOR and PGT, next came GD. So in GD, what is there is, like, you sit in a semicircle, we know that. So in the semicircle, the first topic was given to us is about UPI transactions. Okay, and like the online payment and everything. So we started off with points. I made 2 to 3 good points relating to the new feature in the Google Pay that is there, about the pocket feature. So like people below 18 also can have an access to money, and they can also learn money management. I mentioned that. And I also mentioned some of the key government schemes related to cyber attacks and cyber complaints, and how you can complain and everything. I mentioned that. So the second topic that was given to us in GD2 was about uh, clearly about, I think about semiconductors and make in India, and that. So in that also I made a few good points. Then came GP, very important. So the GP was a simple picture, and then we wrote the solution. And in the solution, I started off with the problems, then the number of people, then sequence wise actions. I wrote my solution. But in the discussion part, Again, there was a lot of fish market there was there. So I just made 2 or 3 points and then let others speak. Now after that, the day ended. Then GTO day 2, we started off with individual obstacles. In the whole GTO process, let me tell you in brief. Uh, I had practiced GTO a lot, like all the stages of GTO. But individual obstacle is something that I'm not able to tackle that much because of my overweight, and also there is a I think that uh, kind of fear that is there inside me for height. So when the individual obstacle started, I started with screen jump, and then after that I went to tiger leap, and then on tiger leap I just bruised my hands, and it was like it was like bleeding. My fingers were bleeding, and after that I couldn't think much. I just started running, then just crossed the double barrel, then went to the commando walk, and then on the crisscross I just managed to stand, but the whistle was blown. After that, command task started. So one thing that why I'm telling that I did my GTO well, because the first thing that happened is that when we completed our individual obstacles, the GTO briefed us about like if anybody got hurt or something, and I just mentioned that yes sir, I have got hurt, and he's like okay, okay, and then he said that now we'll move to command task. So the first candidate who was called was me, and just called just number 6. So I just came, and then he started asking, "Hello, Ashit, how was your interview?" The first question. I told him that sir, it was good, sir. I was not able to answer some of the questions, but it was good. Then he said, "Okay, Ashit, tell me about Patna. Tell me about your schooling." So I did. He just asked a few questions. He didn't ask me any technical question. Please remember this because I'll tell you further in the video. So he didn't ask me any technical question related to the Navy, any operation related to any question in missiles, ships, nothing. Then he straight away went to the command task, and I called two of my subordinates, and then we started implementing the solution. And as I said, I have practiced a lot, and it is very important. Like I would like to advise everybody who's watching this video, if you are facing trouble in like issues with your GTO techniques, you can just go to any of the SSB centers which has a big GTO ground, and you can practice as much as you can. Like you can think like regarding lecturate or regarding OIR or regarding PPDT, TAT, VAT, SRT, all these things you can practice at home. But GTO, as far as it's concerned, you need to tie that rope. You need to think that solution while standing there. That has a different kind of experience, and you need to experience that. So my advice is that you should go to a GTO ground, offline GTO ground, to attempt your SSB, or before attempting your SSB. So started out with my command task, and it was a very simple structure. I just implemented the solution, and he tried to pressurize me also that the last 30 seconds remaining, commander, please implement your solution fast. And then I just implemented the solution. He said outstanding, outstanding, commander. And then the two subordinates whom I called, they called me, and then what I wanted to tell that all others who were there in my group, the GTO asked them in brief about Indian Navy and details related to Indian Navy, but he didn't ask me, as I mentioned. Then after that, we went inside the lecturate hall for our lecturate, and the topic, they were given 6 to 7 topics were given to us. Chits are there, and you just take your chit, and then you can just go outside, prepare for 1 minute, and as soon as the previous chess number finishes, you just enter the room and just you start your lecture. So you know that in lecture there are good topics, there are hard topics, and then there are topics that are beyond imagination for the freshers, because there are hard topics, there are social impactful topics, there are general related to current affair topics, and then there are topics related to my childhood, my future leader or my inspiration, something like this. So I took a very strong topic that was about on related to online reviews, like trust of online reviews, and I just started off with like that. I'll divide my topic into 4 parts. Starting with my introduction, I'll talk about the offline market scenario before 2022, and I started off with the word of mouth concept that is there in offline shops. Then I mentioned about the online reviews. Then I mentioned how online reviews can be tampered, how they are paid for, and how influencers in today's era, give paid reviews which are not original. Then I also talked about the Gen Z effect, that the people of my generation, we don't know how to save money. There is a lot of competition that is there. And then I mentioned about one effect that is there, that since we are not able to afford a certain kind of life that is there, what we do is effect, that kind of effect that is there with the generation, our generation, that if we cannot afford a kind of lifestyle, that we are thinking of in our early 30s. So we think that since we cannot achieve that idea, so we try to adjust with some kind of lifestyle, like buying an iPhone or buying a smaller thing, a smaller happiness, I would say. So this is some of the point that I mentioned, and after my lecture, there was the final group task. Now, before the final group task, the GTO clearly told us that, gentlemen, so far, however you have performed, you need to be thorough with your ideas before executing in your final group task. So in the final group task, I just जो कहते हैं ना घोड़े खोल देना, I just stopped thinking much. This time I just took the initiative. I just told my group that, gentlemen, we can just move forward with this solution, and then I started implementing solution one by one. Although some of them were not ready to follow my instructions or my solution, but then when they saw that half of the group has already crossed the first obstacle, they joined in, and then we completed the obstacle. So this is how the GTO also ended. And on the fifth day of conference, it was a beautiful morning for all of us. It was my first conference. So again, we are briefed about the conference that we will be called in one by one. We will be sitting in the waiting room. Then when there is a red signal that is there, when that turns green, you have to get inside. So when I entered the room, there were like one side of panel there was psychologists sitting, one side there were GTOs, and then there were 2 to 3 officers, president basically. So I think that one of them started asking, "Hi, Harshit, how was your overall experience?" Then I explained him. Then he said, "Harshit, rate yourself, rate your entire experience." So I told him that, sir, in psychology, I think that I missed some of the stimulus. In VAT, I think some of the uh, words I was not able to derive accurately. And sir, in my GTO, I was not able to perform well in my individual obstacle. Then I told you, okay, Harshit, which attempt is this? So I told sir, a total of 3 attempts. This is my first conference and 2 screen outs. So he said, okay, okay, Harshit, and what do you do currently now? So I told him, sir, that I have graduated, I am placed, and I am currently preparing for CDS as well as waiting for my joining. So I told, okay, Harshit, any suggestions to SSB Kolkata? So I said, sir, no, sir, very beautiful place. One constructive advice I would like to give, that there should be a wall clock in every room that was allotted. There was no wall clocks in our rooms, and I told him that yes, sir, this is the one constructive advice that I would like to give. Then said, okay, Harshit, thank you. And then I just left. There was no waiting period for me. So either it is yes or no. And majorly it's no. So out of 23 or 24 people, 3 got recommended, and I was not among them. Uh, it was a beautiful experience for me this time. Now I was not able to cover all the points that I have noted down about my psych, about my interview, and about my GTO. I will cover it in the next video. So stay tuned for that video, and I'll post regularly now about my whole journey, as well as we'll start preparing together, starting from OIR, then the psychology, then the TAT pictures and PPDT and everything. And then I'll like clearly talk about the lecture topics also, like the geopolitical topics, the social economical topics. I will cover them as well in my further videos. So stay tuned for the next part. Thank you.